Hannytime. A daily look at sports from our resident historian. Your sports break during your lunch break. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios. Here's Charles Sandegriff.
And welcome you into the Thursday edition of Hannytime, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. I'm Charles Sandegriff, Mario Jerez, and Jacob Beck with you here today. Busy show. Fletcher Mackel from WDSU in New Orleans will be with us in the second segment. Saints and a little bit of Pels. Shea Dixon from On 3 with us at the bottom of the hour. We'll talk about transfer portal stuff. But we start today with the news that came out just a little while ago that Alabama baseball coach Brad Bohannon has been fired by the university 5 days after suspicious wagering on Alabama games flagged and took Alabama activity off of the board. This all started out of the Ohio Casino Control Commission based on a bet that took place last Friday at Great American Ballpark, and that game was against LSU. We're going to bring in Jimmy Ott here. I just want to read you from what the agency said. They were alerted to the alleged activity last Friday by an independent Las Vegas-based integrity firm called U.S. Integrity, works with the OCCC and the Southeastern Conference to monitor the betting market. U.S. Integrity alerted its clients last week, and betting on college baseball games involving Alabama was halted. The SEC has used this integrity firm since 2018. Let's bring in Jimmy Ott now, who's obviously been watching this story, and is our gambling historian slash aficionado, sports wagering. I think you're the boss on that program, Jimmy. So, what say you on what happened last Friday and what has transpired today?
Yeah. So, Charlie, I thought it was interesting coming from the Alabama side because history has shown when games have tried to be influenced or fixed, it's the superior team. It's the team that, is a 12-point favorite that wants to come under the number, and win, but win by 6. Whether you subscribe to Michael Jordan, Sacramento was terrible. They're 18-point favorites. The game falls 12. So I found it that they were looking into the inferior opponent. The inferior team cannot impact or influence a game like a superior team. So how am I supposed to say that? I mean, you're going against the number one team in the country, against the number one pitching prospect who's been compared to Justin Verlander and Garrett Cole. How are you going to influence the game in any bit? So I think it's more of the communication between the coach and this bettor up in Ohio. Keep in mind that the limits on college baseball regular season games are completely different. I know you had Dwayne Colucci from the Rampart. The Rampart and the South Point, they don't even post numbers on regular season games. They wait till they get to the regionals, and sometimes not even until they get to the College World Series. But as we learned with the draft as well, the limits within Nevada and outside of Nevada on things are completely different. Mike Palm, who's the vice president of Circa, who's probably they like to brand themselves as the biggest sports book in the world. I've been there many times. I know Mike. Their limit for a regular season college baseball game is $500. Talk to some officials in some mobile sites. As long as you are not flagged as a non-recreational player, there really aren't any limits, on what you can bet. So it's not just the $500, $1,000 bet. I'm speculating now, Charlie, that would have raised a red flag. So that's the thing. And I would think through Alabama's investigation that they found some line of communication between the coach in this particular bettor, who the gaming commission knows, because that size of a bet, a sizable bet that will raise a flag, they have to mark, get a player's card or get some sort of identification. So, and we know about the pitching change. It could have been a text as simple as that. Yeah, man, this guy, we can't beat him, and and I can't. And my starter, my number one is not even going to be able to go. Now, when you look at the numbers, and I know you looked at them as well, both their ace and the substitute starter for Friday night both have ERAs in the 3. It's minimal. It's not their ace, but again, I think it's more of the line of communication for Alabama to terminate him immediately. He had to use a university phone, but that's what I think. It's just not the intent, not the ability to influence the outcome. This is more LSU can influence the income, being the superior team, but it's more of the line of communication between the head coach in this sizable wager.
So it's unlikely that any players on the Alabama team had any knowledge of this, right?
I would speculate. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would just. You can't influence the game if you're not the superior team, or So, I mean, that would be on LSU. That would be, and listen, don't want to play in it, but a pitcher of the caliber of a Paul Skeens, all of a sudden he has an off night, something like that. A Garrett Cole who has an off night. So, no, I would doubt that this is player related. I think they would have also announced that maybe they were suspending some players. Now, if that follows, but I just. I think it's.
I think you got it. I think you got it right. I think this is a coach that has communicated information, and whether that information helps the better or not is really irrelevant. Alabama came back in that game, had the go-ahead run at the plate, but if you give that information out, Jimmy, you're guilty at that point. It doesn't matter whether the outcome falls the way you thought it would or not. This is going back to Pete Rose, right? When Pete Rose was accused of gambling on baseball, I said, well, I always bet on my team to win. Well, that's fine, but you establish a pattern with certain bookmakers back then that when you don't bet on your team to win, that is essentially like telling us you don't have the confidence in your team to win that day. So you're just as guilty if you're providing that kind of information to somebody that's outside of your team.
Charlie, I don't even know if it's just the information or if it's strictly communication.
Yeah.
If they just have I don't know if it's, a direct text or if they just have phone calls, multiple phone calls before the LSU-Alabama game and are linked to this better. Can the coach not control everybody he speaks to about that they don't know if they're going to make sizable wagers or not? I don't know, but that's something that you got to be obviously very careful, in that position. So it's the Alabama's decision today kind of completes a little bit of this puzzle because nobody's releasing the amount of the wager. A lot of people in Nevada are just puzzled, like this is a BS claim. No, but if you're terminating a guy immediately, I think look, LSU coaches in the past, there was some indiscretions. Well, they pulled up the text and they say, okay, no, you don't really have a leg to stand on. Okay, so there's some history there. So I just, I got to believe that, either it was a line of communication or information that was passed on to the sizable wager.
If the top dollar bet in Vegas, and I know that the onlines don't have that limit, is $500, just give me your best guess, Jimmy. What size of a wager would it take to trigger from a non-sharp bettor, a non-flag bettor? What type of wager monetarily do you think it would take to trigger an alarm?
For Ohio to shut down, and New Jersey is the most respected state on how they handle it. They were the original ones. They got this whole thing started with their legislation. And, our buddy Bruce Marshall from Gold Sheet, who's gone to different, sports gambling conventions in New York, the main message that they convey is follow New Jersey, follow New Jersey. New Jersey is highly respected, probably the most respected mobile state out of Nevada. And for them to ban Alabama, baseball betting is notable. That's something that is serious. So we're like, okay. And my phone calls were telling me, my contacts saying there's more to this. Wouldn't expound, but now it's like, this doesn't make sense. I mean, I made a small wager on Paul Skeens myself. I thought his record was not like it wasn't as good as his pitching. And we know about the fall off from LSU. I mean, Skeens is, as close to a sure thing on a Friday night when he starts, and especially on the back end of the schedule, 235. And Charlie, we've monitored these LSU movements. LSU is the most public team when it comes to college baseball. So have a wager. So to be a wager in Ohio, Charlie, I would guess six figures.
Six figures, okay. With a $500 cap in Vegas, a six-figure bet would certainly get some attention.
That doesn't mean that at the win they're not taking $1,000.
Sure,
but if circus is 500, it's not a whole lot anywhere else in Nevada.
I want to make it very clear for people that could care less about sports wagering and they hear about a game involving LSU. I want to make it extremely clear this has nothing to do with LSU, nothing at all. The only thing that links LSU into this thing is this is the game that they caught him, okay? So there's no improprieties where LSU or any of the players or coaches or anything like that is concerned. This is completely an Alabama thing, and LSU's games, along with everybody else, remains on the board we got SEC action tonight, Jimmy. Are you expecting that this is going to trigger any more shutdowns, or is this specifically Alabama, and for now that's it?
That's impossible to speculate on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. I think it will alert a lot of other coaches in how quickly Alabama made this decision. Charlie, I got to think that it wasn't like a single call to the better,
right?
A single, okay, but more of a pattern, And again, if the text, well, and you know exactly what is being conveyed, in the text. So I think there's probably maybe a little bit of a pattern by this bettor involving some other games. Now, keep in mind, Alabama lost every series until the Auburn and Missouri. They've won 5 of their last 6 going into LSU. So, and let's face it, as far as the Alabama players, did they not put up a fight in every game?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, they weren't. They could have easily gone down quietly instead of having to time runs on base, when the final out was recorded. So, no, I think this is an isolated incident. I mean, be completely a guess if you start to speculate. What happens with they make decisions like what happened with the Detroit Lions players, and they were making bets on football, on their at the Lions facility. I think it's an alert to coaches. You have to be careful who you share your information. You're talking to a scout, that's one thing. An opposing coach, a coaching contact of yours in the past, that's one thing. But you have to be careful, especially information that you're sharing.
Jimmy, we appreciate it. We'll see you at Jolie Pearl tonight for game time. We'll be there at 6.
All right, Charlie. Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot. All right, again, if you're just joining us, Alabama has fired baseball coach Brad Bohannon amidst violating standards, duties, and responsibilities expected of university employees 5 days after the suspicious wagering was detected on Crimson Tide's games. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll change topics. Fletcher Mackel from WDSU in New Orleans is with us. This is Hannytime, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hannytime.
Infinity of Baton Rouge. Right now, they're offering you cash for your vehicle right off the street. It'll take less than 15 minutes to get a quote on what your vehicle is worth, and then you can sell it for cash, trade it in for another vehicle. There's no pressure to buy. You can just get the information at that point, and then you're free to do what you please. Of course, if you get into the certified pre-owned program, it's going to have so many benefits. It's why in our family we've gotten into it a number of different times, including just a couple of months ago. Once again, you're going to get a vehicle that's been through a rigorous inspection, back up to code. They'll back it with a 100,000-mile warranty, roadside assistance included, first-year maintenance included, courtesy vehicle when you bring your car in for service. All of these part of the service at Acura and Infinity of Baton Rouge.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets, from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology, from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-2644. That's 756-2644 for Gulf Coast Office Products.
Bayou Ford has the new inventory to get you in a new Ford truck or SUV today, or customize your next vehicle just the way you want it. All new Bayou Ford vehicles come with a 1 million mile powertrain warranty. The crew at Bayou Ford is going to do right by you.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's that time again. It's heating up. Your boat's getting ready to come out and spend all summer on the water. It's time to take your boat to the next level with front-to-back boat service, where if you want an incredible custom speaker install, it's going to blow people away in the water, that's there for you. You want an HD sonar where you can see the fish under the water before you cast, beat all your friends, that's there for you at front-to-back boat service. So don't put it off. We got the parts in right now. Get them now before they go back on back order. Front-to-back boat service.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Hey there, little buddy. What's the matter?
What's the matter? My windows, siding, and my door. That's what's the matter.
Relief Windows can fix all that. I got you. Pop, pop. What's up?
Oh my gosh, look!
Curb appeal. That's a good looking name.
For the Wednesday edition of Game Time, we're live from Modesto, getting you ready for Cinco de Mayo. Modesto on Burbank. It's Game Time, 6 to 8 p.m. Wednesday on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hannytime with Charles Hannegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Remember, you can always get the show on demand, 1045ESPN.com. Joining us now from WDSU in New Orleans, Fletcher Mackel. Fletcher, good afternoon. How are you?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me, as always. I appreciate it. Beautiful day here in New Orleans. Hot. Headed to Jazz Fest.
Yeah. Oh, Jazz Fest. That's right. Yeah, you got the perfect weather for Jazz Fest. I'm going to get into the Saints draft here in just a second, but you're one of my favorite follows when it comes to the Pelicans because you're so passionate about the team. So I'll just ask you, we've had a few weeks to digest the end of the season and what the Pelicans might be doing before we head to the draft lottery. Just your thoughts on how the whole thing came to an end and what this offseason might look like for the Pels.
So I'll answer it, since it's kind of two questions. A massive, utter, and complete disappointment. Like, there's no other way to say it. I mean, look, they were in first place in December in the Western Conference. Zion Williamson was the NBA's Western Conference Player of the Month. I mean, you saw all the pieces there for a team. I thought in December it was going to be Denver, Memphis, or New Orleans. Those were the three best teams in basketball in the Western Conference. And look, I still think Denver's coming out of the West. Denver's really awesome. And Memphis just lost, a tough playoff series against the Lakers and dealt with some injuries. So there's no other way to say this other than injuries derailed their season. Guys not staying in shape in like Zion, once he had an injury, derailed their season. Brandon Ingram not getting back soon enough derailed their season. So, yeah, an utter and complete disappointment. Now, that being said, your second question, what do I expect this offseason? Not a lot, and I know fans may not want to hear that, but here's the thing. Willie Green's a good coach that the team responds to. I do think he's going to make some tweaks to his staff. I do think he probably needs maybe a better X's and O's person, maybe somebody who's been a head coach before. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jaron Collins his associate head coach gets a job like in Detroit as the head coach or moves on as an associate head coach. Casey Hill, I could see moving on. So I think Willie Green will revamp the staff. I think they'll tweak the edges of the roster, like maybe Jonas Valanciunas goes and they find a big man that Willie Green trusts. But Zion's not going anywhere. They've just got to figure out how to keep him healthy and how he can stay motivated and stay healthy. And then, look, Brandon Ingram's not going anywhere. He's an elite player when he's locked in. C.J. McCollum was a warrior this season. And young players like Trey, Herb's going to get an extension. So I just don't think you're going to see monumental changes this offseason. It's going to be more about keeping Zion healthy. Because here's the thing. Look, Joel Embiid dealt with massive injury issues his first 3 years. He played 36 games his first 3 years. If Zion can put it together, he's not a perennial all-star. He's a perennial MVP, just like Embiid, just like Jokic. So I don't think you're going to see any type of massive knee-jerk changes this offseason.
Do you think that there is a big disconnect between Zion and the front office, whether that be in terms of how injuries are rehabilitated, his weight, his usage during games, his usage during rehabilitation? Do you think there's a disconnect?
I'll answer it. Not 100%, 110%. Absolutely, positively. Look, Zion came in the league at 18. He's still 22 years old. I know they've dealt with maturity and responsibility issues because he is a young man. I think back to myself at 22. I think I've always been my age, but I think Zion may be a little immature for his age. So when he was 18, you're talking about somebody who may have acted and handled things like a 15-year-old. Now that he's 22, he still handles things like a teenager, and they need to have his commitment to understand that you are now a professional. This is a 24/7, 365 deal that, he got hurt, and you can't just get off the reservation when it comes to staying in condition and what you do and how you do it and staying in peak form. So, yeah, and I don't know if he trusts the training staff ever since his first year with the meniscus tear that should have been a 4 to 6 week injury and turned into a 13-week injury, and how they've handled it. But they wanted him to have foot surgery last year. He didn't and rehabbed it. So I do think there's a disconnect. And again, they'll work on finding some synergy in getting to a happy place. But it's not to the point where he's going to demand a trade, and they're certainly not trading him because they'll never get equal value. But there's absolutely positively 110% a disconnect on, I think he and his father, who has a lot of say in what he does and how he does it, they look at like old school basketball, like Charles Barkley and these guys from a different era of just put me out there, I'm going to play. It doesn't matter if I weigh 280 or 295. And the Pelicans, especially since David Griffin got here, are far more on the front end of health and science analytics of you need to be able to be in this shape with this body fat hitting these metrics to be at peak performance over an optimal amount of time. And again, that's where the disconnect is. But, they'll work again. Again, it's frustrating and it's not something fans want to hear, but they'll work again to try to fix it this offseason.
Where does Aaron Nelson fit into this particular problem? He is, for those who don't know, he's the head of the training staff. I think he's got a title as a vice president, but essentially he is the head trainer. Fletcher, where does he fit in? Does Zion trust him? Does the organization trust him? When they brought him in from Phoenix, it was finally the Pelicans' physical problems are going to be a thing of the past. Nelson's going to run this thing the way he ran it in Phoenix, and everything's going to be fine. And that hasn't been the case.
Well, look, I think he does run it the way he ran it in Phoenix. And just for better context, too, what you're saying, just so your listeners know, is this guy in Phoenix, Grant Hill, Shaquille O'Neal, Steve Nash, these guys say he not only extended my career, he saved my career because he was such an elite-level trainer, and the sports science of what they did in Phoenix was so far in front of what everybody else was doing. I don't think he's doing anything different. I think Brandon Ingram, they were very frustrated with the last 2 years because they felt like you're good to go. Brandon Ingram said, I just don't feel right. But I think they took care of him and got him to a point where he was fine. C.J. McCollum played 75 games this year. Trey Murphy played a lot of games. Herb Jones came back from a knee injury and played a lot of games. I just think there's a disconnect with Zion since day one of this is what you need to do and how you need to do it. And we believe in what we're doing, and we're not backing down. Like, you're not going to win this battle. This is how we do it as an organization, and you need to get in line with what we do because we trust this guy in our sports science. And until Zion is a believer, it may not work. And if Zion's never a believer, then it may never work. So, but again, I don't think that David Griffin has lost a lot of faith in Aaron Nelson. I think they're always looking at ways to do things differently and how they can work with their players specifically. But I think that after listening to him at that season-ending wrap-up press conference, I felt like he still has a lot of faith in Aaron Nelson and their staff.
I think it's going to be a really interesting offseason for the Pels. Okay, so I really should work in a Saints question before we let you go. The draft last week, what did you think of the picks, your favorite pick, least favorite pick, your thoughts on the draft?
So I always answer draft questions like this. I think 32 teams think they all drafted multiple future Hall of Famers, and they may all be right now. That I certainly think it's hard to grade drafts and judge drafts right now because, look, I remember the 06 draft for the New Orleans Saints. Everybody said it's Reggie Bush and a bunch of who are these guys, developmental guys, character guys, and Jari Evans and Marcus Colston, ended up going on to be two of the greatest Saints ever. Roman Harper became a Pro Bowler. I mean, Ninkovich played 10 years in the league as a starter on the Patriots team, and everybody hated that draft nationally. I go back to 2010 when the Saints won the Super Bowl, and everybody said the rich get richer. The Saints had the greatest draft ever. Patrick Robinson, Charles Brown, the offensive lineman, Al Woods, the offensive lineman from LSU, and the only player, Matt Tennant, the center out of Boston College, and the only player who turned out being any good for the Saints was Jimmy Graham, who was the developmental guy. So I look at the draft and always say, how do you judge in the days after? I like the guys the Saints got. Does that mean they're going to turn out to be good? I don't know, but I like Brzee if he can stay healthy. I certainly think Bosky is the all-time sack leader at Notre Dame. Looks like a great pick in the second round. Hayner is a developmental quarterback. I like the running back out of TCU. I just think that, don't be surprised if he ends up emerging in a really significant role this year, given Alvin Kamara's potential suspension and Jamal Williams being more of a little bit of a short yardage guy. I think, the Miller kid out of TCU, that would be my pick to keep an eye on this year.
It's funny you brought up Al Woods. He just signed with the Jets. He's still in the league. What kind of odds would you have gotten right after the draft, Fletcher, that Al Woods would be is he the last guy out of that draft still in the league?
No, look, he made, well, yeah, because Jimmy Graham's out of the league. Patrick Robinson's out of the league. Charles Brown's out of the league. Matt Tennant never made it. Sean Canfield. I'm trying to think of other guys in that draft. Al Woods. And look, the Saints cut him after training camp. They traded up to get him, cut him after training camp, and he kicked around a whole bunch. But you're right. He's been a really productive NFL player. It just shows sometimes fit in organization matters. And they made a mistake getting rid of him, and other teams have benefited because, absolutely, he's probably the only one going on year 14 now in the NFL.
Yeah, probably not a lot of guys from that 2010 draft. Des Bryant went in the first round of that NFL draft. Just to give you a little bit of context, Al Woods is still sticking around. Fletcher, we always appreciate the time. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us today. Enjoy Jazz Fest. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks for having me.
Fletcher Mackel from WDSU in New Orleans. We'll take a break. When we come back, Shea Dixon from On 3. We'll talk a little transfer portal with him. That is next. This is Hannytime, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Our listeners fire off their opinions on the jimsfirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the jimsfirearms.net hotline on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
There it is, the extra mile. On the border of expected and extraordinary for those willing to go further. Like vans customized for work or play. With safety and tech to keep you connected. Supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team. And backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's that time again. It's heating up. Your boat's getting ready to come out and spend all summer on the water. It's time to take your boat to the next level with front-to-back boat service, where if you want an incredible custom speaker install, it's going to blow people away in the water, that's there for you. You want an HD sonar where you can see the fish under the water before you cast, beat all your friends, that's there for you at front-to-back boat service. So don't put it off. We got the parts in right now. Get them now before they go back on back order. Front-to-back boat service.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals. But many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Hello, Samantha, dear, I hope you're feeling fine. And it won't be long until I'm with you all the time. But until then, I spend my money up right down on my last dime. Come on, live Baton Rouge. Ah, no matter what you put me on through, gotta send my love down to
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-2644. That's 756-2644 for Gulf Coast Office Products.
Bayou Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram has $15,000 off all new 2022 1500 SCA trucks. And all new Bayou automotive vehicles come with a 1 million mile warranty. If you need sales or service, the crew at Bayou is going to do right by you.
For live play-by-play this weekend, the Rays host the Yankees Saturday at 3, and the Lakers host the Warriors at 7:30. Then on Sunday, the 76ers host the Celtics at 2:30, followed by the Padres and the Dodgers at 6 p.m. on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hannytime with Charles Hannegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
And we welcome you back in to Hannytime 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Let's bring in our friend Shay Dixon from On 3. Shay, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well, Charlie. How are you?
Fantastic. Busy day. Lot of things going on. I picked today just because we're at that point where the transfer portal is now closed, but it doesn't mean that all that means that nobody else is going in if they want to play next year. There'll be a lot of guys that are in the transfer portal going out. So let's take a little inventory here. Unless you didn't lose anybody else, coming down to the wire here. So with what's on the roster right now, what do they have scholarship-wise to work with this last foray into the portal?
Right. Okay, so it gets a little tricky here because, guys, I can give you, like, initial counters, which they've been around 78. And then initial counter is someone who, when they come to LSU, they are initially on scholarship or count towards a scholarship. And guys like Josh Williams do not fit into that mold. If Damian Ramos, who was their starting kicker a year ago and, got a scholarship for the year, wouldn't fit into that role. And Greg Clayton, for instance, who was a preferred walk-on that started for him and was on scholarship last year, wouldn't fit into that. So depending on how many they hand out on the current team, and I would think Josh Williams obviously would be one of them, they're around that 79, 80 mark, which means you've got 5 spots still to go, which with both portal windows closed, that's a lot of spots.
All right, so there's some names out on the board, but I'll let you. We've seen the Keon Coleman's and Logan Diggs and Trey Amos's of the world. Those are names we threw out earlier in the week. Get you to comment on them, and who else may be a target for this team?
I mean, I think you start with the 3 Louisiana guys, right? And that's something they've made an emphasis on in the portal. We saw them bring a number of Louisiana guys back a year ago. We saw it again already this year with even top prospects like Aaron Anderson, who was a top 100 player signing with Alabama just a year ago and now is already back at LSU. So they want to be able to bring, that's a big selling point, getting really talented guys back here that might not have signed with LSU originally. Logan Diggs, I guess we'll start there just because he's got the most connections, and he's the one I would feel like they have the best shot with. Diggs is a guy who left Rummel High in a year where LSU had offered him, but it was late in the game. He'd been committed to Brian Kelly and Notre Dame for a while. If I'm remembering correctly, that year LSU didn't have a ton of linebackers, and people were even speculating like, oh, well, he could play linebacker if he wanted, and he was going to be a running back, and he went up to South Bend and stuck with them and had a really good year this past season. I mean, he went over 1,000 all-purpose yards thanks to having 200-plus receiving yards, which is an element LSU would love to add to the backfield. So Rummel's been good to them over the years. I think now you've got the connection not only of LSU recruiting him again and Frank Wilson being the running backs coach now, but Brian Kelly being the head coach, someone he has been recruited by and signed and played for while in South Bend. All of those, elements combined with the reality that he is a Louisiana native and probably the top guy in the portal right now among that group, that he's a big priority for LSU. Now, a number of other SEC teams are in here. Other teams are trying to get in the mix and get into campus. So not going to be surprised if he makes a couple of visits, but when dust settles, I think that Diggs, a running back, would end up at LSU. That's my guess right now. I'm a little more in the dark here on what happens with Trey Amos, who's coming out of UL, and then Keon Coleman, who's coming out of Michigan State. Amos was a really good player at Catholic Catholic New Iberia a few years back, and he had signed with Napier. Napier and them were doing a great job of evaling the state. I mean, he had won a state title in football. He won a state title in the long jump. So a really good athlete. And then he went and played cornerback for them and had a really good year this past season. Good season this past year. And now I think he added like 14 offers in 24 hours of going in the portal. And Napier was one of them in Florida. LSU's one of them. Bama's one of them. So he's going to have his kind of pick of the who's who out there. I think it'll just come down to, with a guy with 2 years of eligibility left, like what are you looking for? Are you looking to come in and start somewhere? Are you looking to compete? And obviously the depth chart's going to look different at each school. I do know that LSU's working to try to get him to come to campus and visit and all that. So they're still on cornerbacks, and that's what he would be viewed as. And then the final guy's Coleman, and he's intriguing here because, Charlie, if you'll remember the 2021 class, and we've got you hip to recruiting over the years, LSU signed maybe the best receiver class in the country, and they had gotten Malik Neighbors, who had not even played his senior year, but was still ranked very highly. Chris Hilton had stayed in state out of Zachary. They got Brian Thomas on the second signing day to beat out Bama and a number of other schools and keep him at home. And that was the same cycle where they went, and Jack Besh was another guy, state's leading receiver among those three, signed that year. And then they got Deion Smith, who was the number one player in Mississippi. That's 5 guys. Keon Coleman had 40-something college offers, but LSU wasn't one of them. And they ended up signing those 5 guys. Coleman was playing 1A ball. I think there were some questions of, how quickly does he develop? Well, by year 2, he's catching 800 yards and a number of touchdowns and was one of the best receivers in the Big Ten, which has a lot of really good receivers, especially at Ohio State. So I looked at it this time around for me on Keon Coleman. If he's going into his money year, Charlie, which he'll be a junior and draft eligible, there was buzz that he wanted to leave Michigan State because he thought he could get into a situation where they threw the ball a bit more, maybe a better quarterback situation. I mean, all that speculation was there. Do you look at a room at LSU? While it's not super deep, it's not like they've got 14 guys at receiver, they do have Neighbors and Brian Thomas and Chris Hilton all still on the team who are in that same recruiting class he was. Oh, and you've already gone and added 2 more Louisiana guys. And Kyron Lacey, who started all spring and played last year. And then Aaron Anderson, a top 100 guy and coming back from Alabama. Oh, and tossed in 4 freshmen who are all very highly ranked, including Shelton Sampson, who was the highest in the bunch. So if he's looking for, like, oh, I want to go somewhere and, like, be that guy immediately, I'm not, can you be convinced that LSU would be that spot when I would make the case that Kyron Lacey, Brian Thomas, and Malik Neighbors at this point have all proved to be just as talented as a guy like Keon Coleman would be.
Not trying to run the guy off, but if I'm in his camp, I look at what Jordan Addison did going from Pitt to USC, that offense, that quarterback. He had a good year last year, if I remember right. I want to go somewhere and boost my draft stock. There are worse places in Southern California to spend 6 months, right?
Yeah, and we'll see what all options he has. I know Florida State is getting a visit this weekend. That'll be notable given they had a receiver transfer out, 2 weeks ago, and they play LSU in week 1. And look, I think Keon Coleman's great. I think LSU would more than be happy to add him to the roster. I just don't know what he's looking for. And Malik Neighbors was a 1,000-yard receiver last year, and then you've got Brian Thomas and these guys really turning a corner as year 3 guys. So if I were to guess, I would say of the 3, maybe he's the one that you would put the lower percentage on. And look, they may well end up getting him. I'm just looking at that receiver room and where they're at and just wondering, hey, look, is one guy going to steal the lion's share that's not named Malik Neighbors? And it would be tough for me to think that that's the reality.
Florida State's starting to bug me a little bit, in case you were wondering. Let's talk.
All right.
Let's talk about other positions, as we talked about those guys, other positions that they might look to add one player here in the late portal.
Yeah, well, tight end was one that they had been monitoring and going after guys even from the first portal. And I think the reality of that one was they're just young there, right? Like you would almost want someone who's a graduate transfer, can only play 1 year, but he can help get you through a year where you're trying to bring along, 3 true freshmen behind Mason Taylor, who's the only returning tight end you've got on the roster. But I haven't seen anything really come to fruition there in terms of visits, and there's just not a lot of guys out there, but they'll continue to eval it, and maybe we see him pop up with somebody. O-line was one that they were heavy on in the first window, and then they made an offer in the second window, and we're evaluating a number of guys, and they got Mason Lunsford out of Maryland. He'll be here this summer. So maybe they're about done there. I haven't heard any other names. The big one was safety, and you look at what they've got at safety, and they've got some guys that can move there from corner that they just signed who are kind of, flexible in a sense of like a Jay Ward was or a Bernard Converse was. So you can move guys around. But in terms of game ready, Charles, it's Major Burns, Greg Brooks, and Sage Ryan. And Sage Ryan's your starting nickel during all of spring ball. So Langlois been hurt. Jordan Allen was only a freshman this past year, so he's not a guy who's seen any extended reps and big meaningful minutes or positions. I just feel like I said all spring, even before the spring, man, if Greg Brooks or Major Burns gets hurt, they're in a tough spot. And then both got hurt at different parts of spring ball. So they really want to try to find some safety depth. And they had a guy, R.J. Moten, out of Michigan, who was set to come in for a visit this weekend, but he popped for Florida yesterday, I believe it was, coming off a visit, but not a big surprise. His dad played at Florida, and they had offered him a scholarship now coming out of the portal. So you move on there. But that's the position I'm watching, safety.
Jimmy Lindsey joins the LSU staff from South Carolina as defensive line coach, but this is a guy that has been a recruiting coordinator in the past. So I'm going to ask you about him as a coach and him as a recruiter and your thoughts on the hire.
Well, like anything, and you'll agree here, I'm going to judge both recruiting and on-field after I see it all. So, give me a year, and now I can tell you a lot more about what all of Brian Kelly's hires from when he got here, how they panned out or how it's looked. And I don't know a ton about Jimmy Lindsey before they announced the hire, but I made some calls to people over in South Carolina and people who worked with him before. And the common theme, definitely one of them, was that he's the kind of guy that is relationship driven, and that helps in recruiting. And they, more specifically, they said, hey, look, it's also on the staff and players. The team always loves him in his room, and he's never been anywhere where, he was the bad apple on staff or caused any, ruckus. It was, and we've seen that here before. It was one of those, he gets along with everyone, easy to work with, and the team, defensive linemen love him. Now, recruiting-wise, what can that do for you? They pointed out that this is a guy who's coached probably, I think I've counted it, it was 6 or 7 different states in his, 8 or 9 stops. Now he's in his mid-40s of kind of climbing the coaching ladder, the majority of those being in the Southeast. So he's from the border of North Carolina, South Carolina, so he knows the East Coast, but they said he has a lot of connections in Atlanta. The number one defensive lineman, or I should say this, number one overall prospect in the country for next year, who is a defensive lineman, is from Atlanta. And right now, South Carolina is the leader on the on-3 RPM. Reason being, he just visited South Carolina a bunch, and everybody had said, hey, we're kind of scratching our heads. How is South Carolina doing this against, LSU, Georgia, Bama, all these other teams that want him? And they said, hey, he's got a really good relationship with Jimmy Lindsey. He'd gotten in there early with him. So we'll see how recruiting starts to play out. I know he's, gotten a number of guys kept guys in South Carolina, which is just like keeping guys in Louisiana. It's very important to them. They pointed to one of their top JUCO guys who signed with them that Jimmy Lindsey was recruiting was from South Carolina. But you go to Mississippi JUCO and you leave and you got offers from Bama and State and Ole Miss. It is hard to get that kid to say, no, I'm going back to South Carolina. Jimmy Lindsey got him to do that. So I'm eager to see. I think he'll fit in well. I think relationships are an important part of everything, and it seems like he's very well liked and is pretty good at getting out on the recruiting trail and building those relationships. And then development is what Brian Kelly said was key to him. So I would think we're going to see a guy who, in Brian Kelly and Matt House's mind, is a good talent developer. It was recruiting and developing guys were the two kind of keynotes that Brian Kelly said he wanted to hit on with his hire.
Shay, Matt McMahon out on the recruiting trail right now has added 4 transfers in the portal. Carlos Stewart, Will Baker, Jalen Cook, Jordan Wright. 3 of those 4 guys have Louisiana ties, to be sure. That goes with Corey Cheston, Mike Williams that he took in the high school recruiting period. So what are you hearing on the basketball front? McMahon was on with Hunt yesterday, so I know he's out recruiting. What's the buzz there as we get down to what may finally be some resolution in this NCAA case?
Yeah, I think what we'll eventually have to hear about is if any of, what else LSU's adding in terms of self-penalties or, how all that happens to where then they accept it and say, okay, we're done with all this. So does that mean any more scholarships coming off? The buzz has been they could lose one, but that wouldn't be surprising, nor I don't think would be the end of the world, which would mean they'd have at least one more scholarship at this point or 2 to hand out. So they'll stay active in the portal, and we'll see where they can kind of continue to get guys from. I would guess the high school ranks are just about wrapped out by this point with that many different guys signed. But I do think that we'll probably see another portal addition before they finalize the roster.
Shay, we always appreciate it. What's coming up on 3?
Oh, we'll be tracking these portal guys. I think that's kind of the big thing right now is the coaches are out on the road. So they're all over the country recruiting high school prospects, but they will dip back into Baton Rouge to start hosting some of these guys once they can get visits locked in. So, like I said, with 5 or so spots left on the roster, they are still focused on building this thing up to 2023 because that's what we heard Brian Kelly say after the spring game. If there's an Achilles heel on this team, it's depth. So you need to just go ahead and get to as close to 85 scholarship players as you can.
Shay, we always appreciate it. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
You got it, Charlie. Thanks.
Shay Dixon with On 3. We'll take a time out. Take your questions in the Bayou Ford chat. That is next. Hannytime, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hannytime.
Big Mike's in Denham Springs. Mario's out there jitterbugging tonight. Classes start at 6 o'clock. Alex Harbert on stage from 7 until 10 following that. Tomorrow is Cinco de Mayo, DJ K-Jack at Big Mike's. Big Mike's is perfect for all of your private parties. If you got a graduation party that's coming up sometime this month, they got multiple size party rooms that you can do. It's family friendly as well for those get-togethers. So whether it's large or small, they can handle it. Big Mike's has crawfish on Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays now. It's coming out at 11 o'clock every day. Ball shrimp, all you can eat on Monday nights, starting at 5 o'clock all the way until close. Heading out to watch sports at Big Mike's, over 40 TVs up there. So you can watch during happy hour, Monday through Friday, 3 to 7. Monday through Friday, and all day on Sunday starting at 11 a.m. Big Mike's on Aspen Boulevard, the Denham Springs Institution. At Big Mike's, we're kind of a big deal.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
I drove myself to the ER, had heart surgery, and drove myself home 24 hours later, feeling fine. Starting running again after the procedure, I'm getting excited thinking about it. I had no pain, nothing. I felt great. And right then and there, I was like, oh my God, I'm back. I'm back. It's just amazing.
Oshner Health. Long live you.
Turn my music high, 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 yeah. You don't know what you're doing. Sure I do. I'm from the streets where the hood can swallow on me. Bullets will follow on me. There's so much that you could run the slalom. And cops comb this top to bottom. They say that we are prone to violence, but it's home sweet home. With personalities clash and chrome meets chrome. Prices up and down like this Wall Street.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary, for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected, supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team, and backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded, because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's that time again. It's heating up. Your boat's getting ready to come out and spend all summer on the water. It's time to take your boat to the next level with front-to-back boat service, where if you want an incredible custom speaker install, it's going to blow people away in the water, that's there for you. You want an HD sonar where you can see the fish under the water before you cast, beat all your friends, that's there for you at front-to-back boat service. So don't put it off. We got the parts in right now. Get them now before they go back on back order. Front-to-back boat service.
Hey there, little buddy. What's the matter?
What's the matter? My windows, siding, and my door. That's what's the matter.
Relief Windows can fix all that. I got you. Pop, pop. What's up?
Oh my gosh, look!
Curb appeal. That's a good-looking neighborhood. ReliefWindows.com.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets, from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology, from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-2644. That's 756-2644 for Gulf Coast Office Products.
Friday's OTB will preview LSU's trip to the Plains as the Tigers take on the Tigers. What will it take to win the series? And some champagne shenanigans. Off the bench, 7 to 10 a.m., 104.5 ESPN.
This is Hannytime with Charles Hannegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Bayou Ford chat ask Hanny, will you watch any of King Chuck's coronation this weekend? Probably not. I'm between LSU baseball, the NBA playoffs, and the Wells Fargo. I got plenty to watch. Plus, this is my yearly golf outing I play once a year, and we're playing for the Nicholas Bolna Foundation this weekend. So, no, probably not. I do remember when I was a kid, though, we had 3 channels back then, and when the royal wedding, okay, when Charles married Diana, that was all it was on for like 4 days. All 3 channels, all 4 days. And for a 10-year-old kid that just wants to watch cartoons, it was awful. So no, not watching the coronation. As Candy, do you dust your crawfish? I don't. I'll tell you what I've never quite understood, though, is the consternation that people take with how other people eat their food. I don't care. I don't dust my crawfish, but I don't care if you do, okay? I don't care what you have on your hamburger or how you cook your steak. I don't. Now, if you're cooking for me, then I care. If I'm at a restaurant and I'm ordering it, and I order crawfish and they come dusted, then I'm probably going to send them back. That's a lie. I'd probably eat them anyway. But that's not how I would have them prepared, okay? But if the guy next to me has his steak, cooked to like a hockey puck or has it raw, basically bleeding, I don't care about that. But no, I don't dust my crawfish. Ask Candy, will Saban eventually be the Alabama AD? I don't think so, because I don't think he wants that job. AD jobs, they suck. Okay, you're the least popular guy in the room. I mean, you get a nice parking spot, a nice salary, and good tickets to all seats to all the games. But basically, you talk about putting out fires all day, every day, and somebody somewhere is mad at you as the AD all day, every day. It's a thankless job. No, I don't think Saban wants. He could have it if he wanted it, but no, I don't think he wants it. Thanks to everybody for participating. From Mario and Jacob, I'm Charles Hanniger saying thank you and good afternoon. Stay tuned for Hunt Palmer on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
The world's leaders in obesity research, obesity medicine, and obesity science are right here.
We're doing something that no one's ever done, or trying to answer a question that no one's ever asked before.
Pennington is a real jewel